Hi, marketers. This is Dots, and welcome to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. With me here is Clark Johannson, the President and CEO at ClickSpace. This award-winning entrepreneur is also a board member at the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and director at A100. We will be talking about advanced B2B performance marketing strategies. I know you guys are ready, so let's get it. Clark, welcome. How are you doing?
Doing very well.
I'm great. So excited to have you here on our podcast and, really about the episode that you'll be talking about today. So before we start, could you please tell us a bit about yourself, your background, your role, and how you've come to become where you are today?
Well, I guess I would be your textbook serial entrepreneur. I've done about 14 technology startups and raised about $25 million in private equity to get those guys going. Everything from healthcare to internet ticketing to digital marketing and a few other kind of bumps and hurdles along the way. And that's right now I have about 3 ventures that are kind of under the go. And all of them generally have the same kind of thing. They're generally web-based SaaS model technology companies. And some have been wild successes and some have been very difficult, humbling lessons that I carry with me to this day.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of startups. I know that in terms of the value or the pedigree that you've built, you are one of Canada's best marketing experts, to the world, in my opinion. So can you please tell us, how you continue to help, the venture capital world, some of the things you've learned from, these startups that you've worked with, and what do you see that industry going forward?
Well, it's an interesting time right now. If you had said 2 years ago, I would have said, geez, we're on fire. Things are going fantastic, right? Capital was flowing in, ideas were happening. We're in an inflection point for sure in the world right now. Like the advent of successful large language learning models is really altering so many aspects of what we would do. But over the years, I've seen through my participation in A100, which is a group here in Alberta where we try to provide mentorship to young startups. So I've maybe mentored 50 to 100 different little startups through the time. What I've seen is the magic seems to be about really getting intimate with your customer so that you can make hard choices because you don't have enough money. You never have enough money in a startup, right?
Yeah.
And you make these few pivotal decisions very early on in the process to decide that this is the benefit we're going to deliver. Because you start saying, I want to deliver every benefit. And you can't because you're running out of money. Every day you're running out of money, right? Yeah. And you have to be really, really confident. And the only way you can get confident is by truly digging deep into those customers. So I'd say, I think the lesson I've learned over the years was, even as CEO, I have to actually be speaking to customers all the time. And then you make better choices. It's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I will, further down this episode, I'm going to be diving deep into how this mindset can be adopted by enterprises, because I personally am on a mission to have enterprises think like startups. And that's just always the best way to have sustainable growth. Now to the topic. When business leaders in general, regardless of the industry, B2B, B2C, even as of today, feel uncertain about their revenue growth. They don't feel like, they have a revenue growth that is predictable, especially one that is contributed, that has a marketing contribution. And one of the biggest reasons we can all agree on is the lack of visibility on that side of growth. So can you please explain, why this is so much of a big problem and why many enterprises or even startups still struggle with this? And if there are other problems as well that you see that are marketing related?
Yeah. So, the story goes, you're in this startup, you have this concept, you have this idea, you build it, took you money to build it. Now you're kind of sharing it with the world. And you're trying to kind of get them to be able to be awareness one side and then customers on the other side. So the challenge is that you have to start to think about all of your potential marketing channels, social media, direct sales, everything, related to podcasts and all these kind of other kind of elements, right? All of them come with a price tag. And sometimes as a small entrepreneur, you say, well, we should do social media. Well, we should do a direct sales call. Well, we should, buy keywords and be on Google ads. And we have all this, barrage of opportunity to promote your product.
Yeah.
But every single one comes with a price tag. And you know what the biggest price tag is? Time. You just don't have enough time to do them all. And so if you can't get to predictable revenue really quickly, and I'm talking like at least 20, 30% compounded growth, if you can get to 20%, 30% in your early days, you might have something, then you have product market fit. So how do you decide? Because you're in a meeting with your team and they're saying, yeah, we should do a podcast. It's a lot of effort, a lot of time. Yeah, we should do this. We should be spending money on AdWords. So you have to have visibility and you have to have tracking. And when you see how much work that is, you start to realize I can only pick one or two. And I have to know economics of what every single one of those leads generates. And I keep searching for that channel that is the really successful, profitable channel. And that requires detail. Good friend of mine, the expression of the devil is in the detail. Well, a good friend of mine, she would always say, God is in the detail. And that is so true. When you actually have a campaign where you're tracking every single element, you are looking at every single conversion and you're watching, Hotjar and user behavior, and you get into the real detail of that campaign, there's this beauty that comes out that says, I actually understand what this human is doing. And then you get confidence and then you can invest like crazy into that marketing channel and then you get success, right? But the shotgun with no tracking, you might as well quit now.
Exactly. I think when it comes to knowledge, most of our listeners have a good idea of some of the things you've said. But I think the biggest challenge is, just like you said, is a lot of work. People don't want to get involved in it.
Yeah.
And I like,
courage.
yeah, go ahead.
What courage it takes to say, I'm not going to spend money on Google ads. It's courage, right?
Yeah.
That means that, I could be making a huge mistake, right? So how do you make that choice if you don't have confidence that this is the unit economics and it's not going to be profitable? So I'm not going to waste my time. How many times do we see customers that that you see them and you're going, wow, you spent $30,000 on that campaign. How many leads did it get? Not really certain.
Spray and pray, like they say. People still say that and they say it's not great, but people still do it because it's and it's because marketing is not easy. I think there's a wrong mentality about what marketing is and how to approach it, and the expectations and the levels and the standards continue to rise while people have that still mindset, really. So I hope with some of the things that you've really broken down here in terms of the mindset, which I think one of the most important things for marketing professionals right now is beyond all these things about maybe strategy or analytics and tactical stuff or tools, but it's about the mindset. And if you're listening or watching here, that's what Clark has just broken down in terms of know your unit economics, know the vertical that works for you. But in order to know that, don't use your gut all the time, right? Yes, they say gut can make you a millionaire in a lotto, but that's lotto. Make sure you have the visibility and the insights at all levels of the customer journey, to get you to that decision that you need to make. You had mentioned, Clark, product market fit, in your response there, and I would like us to get into that a little bit. Um, if I would pick one thing that I've learned from you over the years, is the phrase "the job to be done." I use it everywhere these days. But yeah, you are credited with that. And I would like you to tell us what that means, really, the job to be done.
Yeah, that's a sign that I'm an old guy, because in my day, the marketing guru guy named Clayton Christensen, who wrote the book Inventor's Dilemma. This is a very old book. Well, he co-authored a new article called "The Job to Be Done," which was a paradigm change for us, because we were in the world of personas. Oh, you create a persona, and this is going to be, Frank, and Frank is our customer, and Frank has a job, and he lives in a suburb, and he has 2 kids, and he, goes to work on Fridays, and likes to have a beer at 6 o'clock, like all that stuff. Like, we were trying to create these personas, right?
Mhm.
And in the article "Job to Be Done," Harvard, that Harvard article, which was, I think, a little bit transformative for me anyway, was the concept of saying that, you have all of these personas, but they all have a specific reason, a job they're trying to solve, to be able to, motivate them to buy your product.
Yeah.
And the example that Clayton used was they were trying to optimize the sale of milkshakes for McDonald's. And in the article, and he kind of says that, well, they thought that milkshakes were a treat that you have, kids would have. And all of a sudden they were finding out that they were selling a bunch of these McDonald's milkshakes at 8 in the morning on a
Mm.
McDonald's next to a highway. And they're like, wait a second, 8 in the morning, kids aren't in McDonald's at 8 in the morning. And they're like, well, what the job to be done was the person was driving to work. They
Yeah.
wanted something they could enjoy for the 1.5 hour commute. They wanted to be able to retreat themselves as they prepare for the day ahead of them. And they were buying a milkshake. And so it wouldn't have fit any of the persona concepts that we had, based a lot of our marketing strategy around.
Yeah.
That became a transformative concept to say, okay, now let's really understand, what is the job? So that's where the 5 whys kind of comes out. Hey, you're buying our product, why? Well, because I really like milkshakes. Well, why did you choose a milkshake instead of a coffee? Well, because coffee I drink in 5 minutes, and a milkshake, it takes me 30 minutes to drink it. Oh, and why do it? What's the reason that you chose, this over that? And they would dig into it. And then at the base, again, God is in the details. All of a sudden, this human truth comes out. This human truth that they don't share in the first 3 questions, because it's really personal. It's
Yeah.
like real personal thought. So how does marketers get to the level of personal honesty? So they uncover this human behavior, the truth of this human behavior. And then if you get to there, holy cow, you really have a nugget that you can build a strategy around, versus these very aloof, conceptual personas that we lived in before. That's why
Yeah.
that concept.
Yeah. And many people still live in those Frank. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's Frank. Yeah, he's
This alley,
Elizabeth.
E
Yeah.
drive, BMW,
But and the reason why I like this so much is also something else I've heard in other fora on the share of life. So whilst exploring the share of life through these whys, you get the job to be done either at each level or at the most important level, on that with that person's customer journey, because you are digging deep into their share of life, however way you are trying to extract that information. But again, while it's not easy, it provides the basis for sustainable growth. Sustainable growth that marketing can provide, sustainable growth that can deliver commercial value, and then you can call yourself a true growth marketer. I used to say that there are many marketers out there. They are just marketers. But if you are not a growth marketer, then don't bother trying to see if you want, marketing leadership is out of the question. It might seem a bit aggressive, but I think that is the truth. You have to see that being a growth marketer entails the God in the details, as Clark has said. It also entails, looking at whether it's micro or micro details about your customer, the decision-making funnel and the stages around that, and how deep can you really go to get the kind of insights that you want in order to deliver that job to be done, or deliver the needs or the customer goals, as some will call it. Now, let's get a bit technical here, Clark. And if you're listening, you're going to be very excited about what's about to happen here. And feel free to please take some time on this if you want. In terms of marketing unit economics, what do you think are the high-level components of a well thought out marketing unit economics strategy?
Yeah, so unit economics is critical to SaaS companies, right? Because we don't make a lot of money. Greek says many of us, I don't achieve profitability for a long time, right? I have product, I'm selling it for $60 a month. It costs me, $400 to acquire that customer. I don't see profitability on that individual unit for 8 months.
Yeah.
And so the numbers are in that range. Typical SaaS companies don't see profitability on a customer for 9 to 12 months. Bigger enterprises, 16 months, right? Mm-hmm. And if you can get it to 8, you're a bit of a rock star. Oh, and so you're trying to get this, and then I'm growing. So every dollar I'm pouring back in, so I don't get profitability. So if I just run my business like I traditionally would for my financial statements, it doesn't work. Yeah. So unit economic analysis is at the heart of every startup. If somebody hasn't figured this out before they start to make their product and appreciate how expansive that is it's a huge deal. Like we used to follow the rule of 72 that said, hey, if I take my monthly growth, multiply it by 72, I'd get what my annual growth would be, because every single month I add another 10 customers. So how do I figure this out? But people should look up rule of 72. If you're doing forecasting based on your unit economics, you need to understand that, right? So unit economics can be tricky because you're attaching costs to the acquisition of that customer, and you're attaching estimates to the lifetime value of that customer. And that's not as simple as it looks, right? So in my world, I tend to put all of my sales costs, including sales reps, marketing dollars, to acquisitions. I don't include like Google hosting fees or something like that are operational. Yeah, all of the front end, but more than just the ad dollars spent, also the person to kind of. And now I've added in, if I have an onboarding cost, like a lot of companies don't, but if it requires a dedicated person to create, configure, blah, 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 get software out, I included that in my acquisition. So basically, until I started to earn revenue $1, all the expenses before that. Now, and then the other side, how do I calculate my lifetime value if I haven't done my business in 5 years, right? Yeah. And it's actually a little more straightforward than that. As I start to get customers going, every single month I may lose customers, and I annualize. And so that gets you the kind of the base that says, hey, I'm probably going to lose. But if you're losing more than 10% of your customers a year, you're having a difficult time, right? It's going to be really hard for you to get revenue growth. So your customer attrition has to really be under 10%. So as a SaaS entrepreneur, knowing those benchmarks is really important, right? So that you can put into your forecast. And then you can decide before you're about to spend all of this money and put your personal reputation to raise capital on the line with people that you trust and love often. Yeah. Do the detail work here.
Yeah. And some people might ask, how does this all tie to marketing? That's because if you are thinking from a concept of a growth marketer or a growth professional, then you have to think about the levels of growth of the business and how all this detail fits in. Just like Clark has said, before you commit to raising money or spending money, if you already have money, like in the enterprise world, you look at, count the cost, look at what your benchmarks are, look at the lifetime value and how, churn or attrition affects that, and look at some of the other things as well that people might feel, oh, that's for the financial guys. No. If you want to operate as a marketer at the highest level, at the level where your effort always translates to revenue, then you need to look at, have some of these things sorted out. And this is not just about SaaS. There are different industries that you could apply some of these rules as well. But having to, know this process, having to make this process done is very crucial, not just at the beginning of a company's or product's life cycle as well, but even over time as you scale in the lifetime of the product, the lifetime of the brand, and in the lifetime of, some of the other very important things that is connected to the initiative, and knowing whether it's even the right time to commit to marketing dollars. I was recently watching an episode on Shark Tank. It's probably an old episode where a lady was pitching a SaaS product that was heavily based on marketing. Nearly 100% of the cost was marketing. So she was trying to run a business whereby without marketing, it fails. And I know, Clark, we won't discuss that here, but you've always talked about the KPI of the virality coefficient, right? And there are companies like our company where they don't, she doesn't want to care about that. She doesn't care about the product. She doesn't want to care about the job that product is to be done. She doesn't care about the organic nature of the brand and how to build that brand to work for itself. She just felt, I need $2 million a year in advertising to get 3 million in corporate revenue annually. And I think it was Mark Cuban, and it was like, this is a scam. That yes, you are here with the right intention, but if you're driving a company that is not, that doesn't have the right economics, and you're just hoping you're going to advertise your way to success, then you must be mistaken. So we're not saying don't do marketing. We're just saying you need to do marketing in a way that provide efficient, sustainable commercial value.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is there. Um, Something else I learned recently is, from some of the things that you've said in the past, is how you differentiate inbound and outbound marketing. So many people, you may not believe this, many people still consider everything we do inbound, everything, and they don't think there's anything called outbound marketing. And it's understandable. I wouldn't call it ridiculous yet. So could you please help our listeners distinguish, between the two?
Yeah. So if I like to kind of think of all of our channels, all the potential ways that you can communicate your product, grouping the group into inbound and outbound. And then within inbound, I consider them targeted and mass. So I'm going to do all this, ad placement, but some of my placement is in television, which is a real mass product. You don't know who you're really speaking to, right?
Yeah.
Or very targeted. I'm only doing lookalike audiences within this kind of world, but all of them end up generating a lead. Outbound is an initiative where I am more spearfishing, right? I'm finding a specific customer with a specific need. I'm researching and I'm approaching that customer directly. I'm initiating the communication in a one-to-one kind of capacity. And then I have specific strategies around that. So you get a bit of a blend. Like if I was at a trade show, I could target my 40 largest customers, have a private VIP event for them, get them through the program, and then see if they convert it to a lead, which converts into a customer, right? And same thing could be for, I'm doing an outbound telemarketing campaign, or I'm going to be reaching out by email now. It's really centered around email. I've identified these customers with these specific needs, with these specific, within a specific segment, and I'm reaching out with them with a really targeted value proposition, right? So each one of those come with different prices, but generally my lowest cost is in the inbound targeted. So Google AdWords, Google Ads, things like that, Facebook, social media ads. My most expensive is the outbound. I'm reaching out and calling somebody. But I typically have the ability to target larger customers and I can get a higher economic return. So my customer acquisition costs versus lifetime value is often less for my outbound than
Mhm.
my inbound. And I manage them quite separately. I have different unit economics around that than my inbound strategies. And all of that funnels into one dashboard. And now like you've done a fantastic job of understanding dashboard economics, like so that you can use a free product like Looker Studio and be able to connect it to these disparate systems. A
Yeah.
Google sheet that your telemarketer is using connected with, Facebook's API, Google's
Yeah.
API, LinkedIn
Yeah.
API, and
Yeah.
tie that together so that in a single dashboard, the marketer can say, hey, my unit economics have changed on LinkedIn, which quite frankly is often super expensive, right? But nicely targeted. So
Yeah. Yeah.
my unit economics have changed. They're not converting the way they have, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to readjust my balance. And
Just sort of like, yeah, that makes sense. And I like the way you sort of broke down both parts. We could also say from an outbound perspective, there is a trending concept of the account-based podcasting where companies reach out to, specific accounts that might be future customers, especially in the B2B world. And then there is that, process of engagement. Before I
yeah,
leave your, yeah, please go ahead.
world, you have such a valuable lifetime customer because the attrition rates in B2B software is much lower, right? So you
Yeah.
create way tighter connections. So I can afford to spend a lot more money to acquire an enterprise customer, which is very difficult to acquire to begin with, right? But
Mhm.
they have such great stickiness. You can get really intimate with their job to be done. Like it's a great program. It's expensive to start, but it's a great, it's great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Another technical detail I would like to follow up on is the J curve. So when I heard about this, I'm like, geez, this is great. Yeah, I know this is a private equity technique,
Yeah.
but um, you've been shown over the years that you are able to apply this to marketing.
Yeah.
And in terms of, okay, this is the phase to which I think a marketing boost might be required to scale and stuff like that, and looking at profitability and so on and so forth. And back to the lady in Shark Tank, if she had a Jacob, perhaps she would have had a better pitch. Who knows? So uh, yeah, maybe. So, can you explain how you use that in marketing? Again, I know this is very technical, and if you are listening here and you want to get to next level, this is the kind of episode to listen to and share with your colleagues. So, yeah, back to you, Clark. How do you use the J curve in marketing?
So let's look at it in two different ways. In a startup world, right? I know that I'm going to sell a customer. It's going to cost me $600 and I'm going to get $60 of revenue. So I lose $540. And when I sell another one, and I lose a little more, and another one. And so, in fact, in the early days, my profitability goes down. After 8 months, those first customers I sold 8 months ago start to become profitable. And then it starts to come up, right? And then at some inflection point, typically 16 months down the road, 18 months, I cross the line and I have profitability. But through this first trough, I'm losing money the whole way. And
Mm.
so when we go to raise capital on a startup, hey, I have a great idea. I'm going to sell an app. It's going to, have a cooking book and I'm going to acquire customers and it's going to cost this and it's going to have that. But over time, my subscription revenue is going to come in and then I'm going to hit this inflection point. So, if you have your unit economics really well dialed in, you can map your J curve and you can say, I need $2.5 million to start this business. And I would typically try to get to 65% and 35% of buffer. Hey, if I mess up and I have to pivot a bit. But there's also another way I look at it. I look at it with product virality. So, and it's a good example would be TikTok, right? They flooded the
Mm,
market millions and millions of ad dollars to get the engine going. But they could look at their viral coefficient, which said that
mm,
I acquired a customer and they told 5 other customers about it.
mhm.
And so I acquired one, and similar happened with Uber, that they didn't have to buy customer 3, 4, and 5. And
Yes.
so they knew that if they bought this many customers, and I think they dropped like close to $2 billion in marketing advertising to get it going. It's like some ridiculous number, right? And if they got that going, that their viral coefficient would take it forward and they wouldn't have to maintain that spending. And that's the similar J curve. I'm going to go down here, but because I know that one customer tells 5 other customers, and that would be phenomenal if it was. It's typically one customer might tell 2,
Mm,
and then it kind of goes up. And so you map it with your best guess, and then you initiate your campaign, and then you start measuring your viral coefficient, saying, wow, we acquired 3 customers and they came in for no reason, just went to the website. They didn't go through our link that came through, Facebook. We're starting to get virality. And now I have a product that I should dump a bunch of money into.
yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
important.
It's just so important because it also helps in even when calculating the return on marketing spend. You want to look at the assisted conversions, as they call it, right?
Yeah.
You run an ad that assisted organic search sales or leads. You run an ad that assisted, just like you said, social media and things like that. But that also works well if the basis is set correctly. Some of the things I notice marketers don't do is that they don't integrate with sales and they don't integrate with product. I'm currently running a campaign through this podcast against that mindset. So if you are listening here and you are subscribed, you'll see a lot of other episodes about sales enablement and the sales marketing loop, but also with product, right? It's important to say this is the feedback we are getting from the market, from social media, from our website experience, and so on and so forth regarding the product, regarding the digital experience, right? And this is what you can use to improve things on your side. Because if the product, if the basis is not good, is not attacking the share of life, delivering the job to be done, then the variability coefficient will not be as expansive as you want it, right? And the higher, the better. Just this year, Tesla started running ads. It is believed, we don't know, but that up until this year, they haven't been running any ads. It's just been, network effect, word of mouth. But why is that so, if that is true? It's because they have fixed the basics, right? Whether it's the basics at the product level, whether it's the basics at the customer experience level where attrition is reduced, whether it's the basic and even the experience level, digital transformation on digital experiences side is still a marketing thing that marketers should pay close attention to. And once they make sure, as Clark said, you are connecting at the human level. There's this trend coming up with the H to H, human to human. It's not B2B, not B2C, it's human to human. You're connecting at the human level, at the level of detail that is possible, then you can get a great variety coefficient, which makes things more profitable going forward. And if you're able to achieve that as a marketer, then you can call yourself a growth marketer that for which everything you touch translates to revenue. And that's, definitely always a good thing. Clark, we wouldn't finish this episode without looking at business intelligence, marketing intelligence. In this case, you've mentioned a bit of that already with how to consolidate data, and I'm happy you touched on that. But I often ask most of my guests this: what are your top 3 performance marketing metrics for startups, regardless of the channel, and why would you choose those 3?
Yeah, for sure. It's customer acquisition cost.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah. Monetary right away. It's revenue growth. So how many units we're signing per. And then I'd really follow the customer feedback. So customer attrition is a little bit too lagging.
Okay.
customer feedback before it so you can catch it before you actually have an attrition.
Yeah.
Um, it's pretty simple, KPIs, but actually getting that together is like your marketing tech stack isn't as simple as it looks, and if you
Mm.
kind of go down the road and say, so our tech stack for outbound sales is Pipe Drive, then we use Freshdesk for our inbound support to kind of track tickets, and then we spin those into product board to try to get an understanding of where. So every time there's a ticket that relates to a feature, it flips into product board. Well, you want to swap one of those out because you're not happy with, some sort of API connection or some user interfacing, you lose a ton of data. You're
Yeah.
starting to kind of start from scratch. And so getting the actual dashboard so that you can make informed decisions never seems to come together 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But I would encourage, any marketer to really kind of make sure that they're confident in their tech stack. And how you know that is basically say, at the end of the day, am I going to get a clear customer acquisition cost? So am I going to get a clear revenue number? This is the revenue for this segment for this product. So I can break down what that revenue actually means. I know exactly what my costs were, came in from Facebook, the ad cost this much. That was my customer acquisition for that channel. And I know it delivered me a customer at this market in this segment with this, job to be done.
Mm.
I can get those two together. Then I can start to kind of say, hey, I've got, and then the last thing I have to keep them, right? And
Yeah.
I'm tracking how their feedback has been. Um, then you kind of got it. But it's really actually super hard to put together because even then there's like cohort analysis, right? Saying,
Yeah.
yeah, but that was before we added this feature. Now I've added this feature. Have I changed my numbers?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but that was during Christmas. And we always do well at Christmas. And like,
Mm-hmm.
so to really get it, the numbers have to be like, I would always say, is this background noise? Like if we were listening to a radio and there's the white noise in the background, or is this the signal?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really hard to know that because there's so much information. But here's what I would say is that if you actually have the product market fit, it doesn't feel like that. It
Yeah.
feels like an obvious signal. And you're like, wow, this is working. And if it doesn't feel like that, then you don't have product market fit and you're in the background. If you're
Yeah.
like circling around and saying, hey, I'm getting sales, there's 5 sales, there's 6 sales, what true exponential growth, like true success, true, hey, FU money kind of stuff.
Mm.
What that looks like is a signal that is so overtly strong that you hit a human truth, you're delivering it on a real job, and you're delivering in an economic way that is going to be profitable. When that happens, there is unlimited capital to help you scale that business. And you as a marketer, you have absolutely nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great and that's beautiful. Just to add an extra question to that, um, you're right in terms of the KPIs there and some of the other ways around measurement and analytics. To say it's not as easy, even though these KPIs are simple. But I'm beginning to feel there's something different going on. And I'm personally pursuing the knowledge around ethical marketing, right? How do you encourage marketers or even business owners to be transparent in the way they measure marketing performance? I'm saying this because people know that if I include, for example, if I include the cost to hire a sales rep in a cost per acquisition cost, that is going to make my KPI a failure and make me look bad, maybe threatening something else. But if you've got that transparency, you can go to leadership and say, this is the right, most correct process around this. Yes, it is a failure, but these are the things I'm trying to do to make it better, and so on and so forth. So, first, do you even see that happening? And if you do, how do you encourage, marketers and startups owners on why it's important to show the authenticity of the data that they are looking at, so that they can produce real growth. As in the title of this episode, delivering real growth.
Yeah, I think it's as a marketer, sometimes what happens is we get this feeling that we have birthed this creative, we've birthed this product, we've birthed this strategy, and we get personally tied to that, right? This is going to be a career failure if this graphic doesn't get the people and the engagement. We can get really, really emotional about it, right? And that's totally natural, because a lot of times it is something that has come from our person and we're proud of it. But when you've been in the business for a long time, you start to get pretty comfortable with failure. And so I would say that marketing is about learning and failure. It is about, riding the bike and falling off. And I have had thousands of failed campaigns, thousands of initiatives that didn't work out. But here's what true failure looks like, is when you fail and you don't know why.
Yeah.
If you didn't learn something from it, if you didn't appreciate where the mistake was and be able to learn from that, then you truly have failed. And I think as a leader, and I've sat at the top of a lot of organizations and worked with a lot of marketers, the ones that I always respected, regardless of whether the campaign was a complete flop and a complete waste of money, is they did the detail, they had a clear strategy, they monitored it at the end and told me what the results were in an honest, candid way, and said, this is what I learned. Because I'll keep investing in them, because they're going to get better and better and better and better. And I kind of want them on the edge. I want them doing stuff that has never been done before, right? And so as soon as I kind of, get really intense with them that they made a mistake, I personally don't want them to feel that stress. I want them to say, I learned this, I'm not going to do it again, but I want to go for another idea, and then I want their creative genius. So failure is part of the game. Get comfortable with failure. Just every time you do fail, make sure you've learned why it didn't work out. And that's just often because marketers can get lazy and they just don't try.
Yeah.
They come in the end and said, how many sales do we get? I think we got 3. I don't know. I don't get connections to sales, so I don't know that.
But we've got 1 million impressions. 1 million impressions, is that not good enough for you? Or 1 million impressions? Oh my God. It's well, it feels a bit arrogant to say, Clark, but sometimes when I hear people say that, I feel a bit disgusted, because the keyword, the KPI, CPM, I believe it should be wiped off the face of the earth. Totally. But people still report this because it has a big volume. We've got 500 million impressions. That's a lot, isn't it?
Isn't it?
So yeah, I cut you short there to finish your thoughts.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You kind of get these vanity metrics, right? You can live in a vanity world when you're a startup, particularly because your ego is so connected to it.
Yeah.
But you just got to learn to fail fast. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Makes sense. It makes sense. The last bit on the analytics side is you have a very special and unique way of measuring data against benchmarks. For example, there's a tactic of, how you measure standard deviation and how you measure trends and things like that, and how people should approach KPIs when they are analyzing stuff on a daily basis. So could you, maybe give some other tips on how people can better read data so that, they can get the actual results? You mentioned something there before now on the product market fit. If you know the product market fit, it will be easier to know why something happened. But from a technical perspective, how do you efficiently read marketing trends within a report? What are some of the things that you look out for? How do you, for example, arrange your dashboard so that you're looking at the most important things first? What are some of the high level best practices, I would say, to enable to help us marketers from wasting our time?
It is kind of like when you get the dashboard done and you're confident in the accuracy of that. Oh, it's a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
Because then I can look at the top of the funnel. Hey, this is where the leads are coming in. My conversion. Hey, this is how those leads are converting by channel. And then I can get my attrition. Hey, these customers here that I'm spending a lot of money on, and they're signing up and they're leaving within an hour of downloading my app.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you need to see the full funnel, right? But you're right. One of the things that I learned early on was to try to avoid some of the outliers. Okay. And that was where you would look at your total lead generation and
Mm.
say, these are my typical numbers. I get in 150 leads a month. I typically convert at 23%. And of those, they end up staying with me 95% of the time, right? But every once in a while, you will get data in that stream that would be an outlier, would be outside the standard deviation. And when that happens, I spend more time on that than I spend on most of the other things, because there's often a nugget, something in there, or there's a problem in my data,
Yeah.
or there's a problem in my process, right? So you're looking at it, and all of a sudden, in this one category, everything else is converting at 20%, 23%, but this category is converting at 1%. And you look in it, and you realize the campaign had an error in it. And for the last 3 days, you've been buying ads because the link was broken or something like that. And oh gosh, or the opposite, all of a sudden it goes through the roof and you find out that it came from a link that got listed on the GQ magazine in the UK. And suddenly we're selling 400 watches from that particular market, right? So knowing whenever things are outside of standard deviation is really, really important. That's where you spend your time, right? And that's after you kind of get to a predictable engine.
Yeah.
And
That
predictable growth and predictable virality. And so, yeah, that's how I kind of run the business.
Yeah. That makes sense. And that makes sense really. If you're listening to this podcast, I've been marketer for 11 years, and I can almost bet 100% that you have not heard this before at this level. This is special. Make sure to share with your boss, share this episode with your colleagues, because this really is true growth marketing. Everything you've learned up to this point is just hobby marketing. This is true growth marketing. And Clark, I am really excited that, all this wisdom our listeners are going to find very useful. And they will not be disappointed for sure with all that they've heard. So much useful information, great advice, tactical tips, high level, low level, best practices. There's so much loaded in this episode. And I'm really grateful for your time, Clark. Where can our marketers find you?
Years,
If yeah,
25 years of mistakes is what that.
it's a lot of scars, right?
A lot of scars, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, and that's sort of what. And I still do a fair bit of mentorship and stuff like that. So if people have questions, they're happy to help out. And particularly startups, and that is near and dear to my heart, because I hate, I had a lot of scars from making some obvious mistakes, and if I can help somebody else avoid them, I'm motivated to do that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Make sure you find Clark Johannson on LinkedIn if you're a startup needing coaching and advice. It can't get any better than Clark Johannson. Just say,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's all for today, guys. Thank you for listening. See more episodes at dotslovesmarketing.com and subscribe to the Marketing Leadership Podcast on Apple and Spotify. Till next episode, connect the dots.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. brought to you by Dots Loves Marketing. There will be links to any resources mentioned in today's show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.